Ukrainian defense forces continue to methodically wipe out Russia's oil refining map. One of the latest updates, the Ukrainian armed forces struck an oil refinery in the Samara region. This is one of the key producers of high-grade fuel for jet engines, the very same fuel that the aggressor country's army uses to terrorize Ukrainian cities. Things are tense in Saratov as well. Ukrainian drones pay to visit there too. How do such visits affect Russia's economy? Let's break it down. These shots show the launch of Ukrainian Bars jet drones. It was these drones that struck the Novorossiysk oil refinery in the Samara region. The facility produces a whole range of products that the aggressor country eagerly uses for its army's needs. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine reported that fires and explosions were recorded at the site. The extent of the damage is being clarified. Unlike Russian propagandists, Ukrainian military personnel don't make up victories on the fly. They prefer to get accurate information. However, there are already confirmed facts regarding the Ryazan oil refinery.
Units of the Ukrainian Defense Forces struck the facilities of the Novorossiysk oil refinery in Russia's Samara region. This is an oil refinery with an annual processing capacity of 8.8 million tons. The enterprise produces more than 20 types of commercial products, is involved in supplying the Russian occupation army, and is one of the main producers of high-grade fuel for jet engines. The results of the strike on the Ryazan oil refinery have also been clarified. Oil processing units, a petroleum product storage tank, and a pipeline trestle were damaged, from a publication by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine on Telegram.
The Saratov oil refinery has repeatedly been targeted by Ukrainian Defense Forces attacks. According to Reuters, on November 11th, the facility halted operations, and by the 13th, it was hit again. The agency reports that there are no plans to restart it anytime soon. The reason is simple. The only primary oil processing unit and several fuel storage tanks have been damaged. The Ukrainian Defense Forces are systematically knocking out Russian oil refining capacities so that the aggressor country can no longer feed its military-industrial complex with petrodollars. And to prevent these facilities from being restored, they're attacked again. In 2025, Ukraine hit the Saratov oil refinery about 6 times. At the beginning of January, February, reminded them again in August and September, and wrapped things up in November.
As a result of the strikes, the LO6 primary oil processing unit may have been damaged, the only primary oil processing unit at the plant. Its design capacity is about 20,000 tons, or 147,000 barrels of oil per day. In 2024, the Saratov oil refinery processed 5,800,000 tons of oil, which is about 2.2% of the total oil refining volume in Russia. The plant produced 1,900,000 tons of diesel fuel, 1,200,000 tons of gasoline, and 1 million tons of fuel oil. From a Reuters agency publication,
the strike, which was noticed not only in Russia but far beyond its borders, hit one of Russia's largest oil export terminals, Shakaris. And Novorossiysk, on the night of October 14th, Ukrainian Defense Forces struck not only the terminal, but also an S-400 air defense missile system launcher and a missile warehouse. Local residents posted videos of the fire and explosions online. The result of the strike on the terminal? A 2% drop in global fuel supplies. Reuters calculated that this is about 2,200,000 barrels per day. The market's reaction was swift. Fears that the port would be out of commission for a long time immediately drove up global oil prices.
This attack on Russian oil export infrastructure was one of the most destructive in recent months. Global oil prices rose by more than 2% amid concerns over supply following the attack. From a Reuters publication,
the oil industry in Russia is experiencing a serious crisis. The Kremlin has already been forced to bring reserve refinery capacities online just to somehow maintain the supply of petroleum products after the strikes by Ukrainian long-range drones. The scale of the problem is clearly illustrated by the statistics. Ukraine's defense forces have disabled about 1/5 of the entire oil refining capacity of the aggressor country. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky stated, "In long-range attacks on Russian oil refining facilities, Ukraine uses domestically produced weapons in 90 to 95% of cases."
Ukraine has intensified drone attacks deep inside Russia, aiming to disable oil refineries, storage facilities, and pipelines, as well as to deprive Moscow of a crucial source of funding for its war against Ukraine. Most of the attacks occurred at the beginning of 2025 and then resumed in August. Ukrainian drones have struck at least 17 major oil refineries. forcing Russia, the world's second-largest crude oil exporter, to limit fuel exports and order additional counter-drone defenses. From a Reuters report,
Ukrainian drone strikes are rapidly depriving the Kremlin of profits. According to a report by the International Energy Agency, Russia's fuel export revenues in October fell to $13 billion, which is $2.3 billion less than in October 2024. For the second month in a row, exports of petroleum products have declined to 2,300,000 barrels per day. This is the lowest level since 2017.
according to the International Energy Agency, in October, Russia exported a total of 7,400,000 barrels of crude oil and petroleum products per day, which is slightly below the level of the previous month. The drop in prices for Russian barrels led to a decrease in the country's total oil export revenues to $13.1 billion, which is a 5-month low. From a Bloomberg agency publication.
The president of Ukraine notes, Ukrainian long-range sanctions are working as effectively as possible, especially in combination with the restrictive measures of its partners. Based on the report from the head of the Foreign Intelligence Service, Volodymyr Zelensky stated that by the end of 2025, the Kremlin will be short tens of billions of dollars.
This year, for the first time since the start of the war, there has been a noticeable decline in the extraction and processing of Russian oil. Oil and gas revenues in the Russian budget are decreasing, and by the end of this year, Russia will lose at least $37 billion in budget oil and gas income. And Russian oil companies in the energy sector are losing tens of billions of dollars more. All of this limits the Russian war machine. Volodymyr Zelensky, president of Ukraine, on Telegram.
Ukrainian long-range strikes, combined with sanctions pressure, have led to Russian seaborne oil exports dropping to a record low. Even the so-called new buyers of Russian oil from Asia, on whom Moscow was counting, are reducing their purchase volumes. The Kremlin wanted to replace lost markets, but now it's losing both old and new ones.
Seaborne shipments of Russian crude oil have fallen to their lowest level in 2 months, and the drop in volumes has been compounded by falling prices, which could potentially deplete the Kremlin's war funding. From a Bloomberg publication.
Because of Ukraine's long-range strikes, Russia's facing serious problems with oil refining. That's why there's a fuel crisis within the Federation itself. Now Russia has to import gasoline. On the other hand, crude oil deliveries to refineries abroad are rapidly declining. The main buyers of Russian oil, India and China, are now scrambling to diversify their supplies. According to Bloomberg, New Delhi's already in talks with Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, and they are ready to guarantee stable volumes. China didn't wait around either. According to tanker shipping statistics from the analytics company Kepler, Beijing has sharply increased its purchases of Saudi oil. As a result, the Kremlin now has to solve 2 problems at once: how to process the oil and who to sell it to. Because without energy exports, and therefore without money, Russia simply won't be able to continue its war against Ukraine.
Subscribe to The Gaze and stay updated on the most important events, top news from Ukraine and all over the world, in-depth analysis, exclusive reports and interviews, all on hand in our channel. Join our community of viewers and stay tuned.